Okay, so Amisha, take us back to the tail end of 2019. What was your trigger?
So end of 2019 is kind of when my marriage was coming to an end. I hadn't actually been in it for very long. We were married for 3 months. And yeah, it was obviously it was a difficult time, as it would be for anyone. Um, but I was very, very much supported by my family and my friends. My family actually really surprised me. My parents, in particular, they were right behind me in terms of whatever decision you make, as long as you're happy. That's the main thing. And I guess, it was one of these situations where, as much as you're prepared and you get to know the person as much as you possibly can before, making that commitment and doing the marriage and everything else, you find out things about people when you're living with them, which is kind of what happened with us. I found out a lot of things, and I'm very open as a person. I was very kind of, you know, very clear in terms of what I was looking for, but I don't think that my ex was as fully open as he could have been in terms of what him and his family were looking for. So yeah, there were a few clashes. Obviously, we went back and forth. We discussed potentially reconciliation, but I just kind of got to a point where I thought, I don't think this is for me, and I couldn't justify going back into a situation where I knew that I wouldn't 100% be happy. And my motto in life has always been, whatever you're doing, just be happy doing it, because life is just too short. And I will not go back on be putting myself out of a situation that doesn't make me happy, be it work, be it relationships, being anything. I've always kind of lived by that in my life.
What was the deal breaker for you?
It wasn't one thing. I can't put it down to one thing in particular. It was a combination of all the different things that were kind of happening, during that time. But I suppose the catalyst was mother-in-law. Much as I hate to say it, she was very, very interfering, and he wouldn't do anything about it, even though we'd had conversations. Said, I don't think this is okay, and he'd agreed with me that, it's not okay, but just couldn't stand up to her for whatever reason. And I just didn't feel like he had my back.
So were you living with your husband's family?
No, actually we were. That's the
Oh,
thing.
okay.
But she was very much the matriarch of the family, and I've come from a family where, I've been very independent and just kind of lived my life. And my parents are there when I need them, but they're not there kind of, in terms of having to oversee and having to have a say in everything that I do in my life. Whereas I think that was kind of where he was.
How did you approach the conversation of this isn't working? Because obviously, often you see a lot of couples where sometimes it's not working, but they'll just go through the motions of it for years and years and years. To make that decision that quickly is, I don't know if it's a good or bad thing, but it's obviously a very bold move to make. And from the sounds of it, it sounds like it was the right decision for you. How did you go
100.
around making that decision so quickly and boldly, and not messing around? Because there's also that, the sunk cost of the wedding, and all this has happened. However many years you dated, which I'm not sure how long that was, but how did you? What was the thought process there?
So the issues were there very kind of, even before that we got married, if I'm being completely honest, with the mother-in-law. She was interfering and causing issues where actually there didn't need to be any issues. And I turn a blind eye to it, thinking, do you know what? It's wedding, it's stressful for everyone, it can bring out the worst in people. It's okay, it'll be fine. And then very soon into marriage, the issues with her were coming up, and I wasn't completely happy. And I'd spoken to my ex along the way in terms of, I'm not happy with this, I don't think it's okay. And as I said, he agreed with me. And then I suppose that the conversation wasn't really much of a conversation, because something had happened. I was at work. My mother-in-law contacted my mum, basically good half an hour conversation where she was just slating me, saying that I'm not doing this for her son, I'm not doing that. and I should be doing this and I should be doing that. And I'd come home from work, and my mum told me, and I saw red, so I called him. He was at work, and it probably wasn't a great conversation. I don't think I gave him much of an opportunity to say anything. I was really quite annoyed, and then we took some time out, and then it was about a month where after this happened, where we kind of went back and forth in terms of what can we do to try and make this work, what changes can we look at putting in place, and then I guess during that month I just couldn't, as I said, justify going back to the situation. I don't think that the changes that needed to be made could have been made within the time that I was prepared to give it. I think it would have taken years, and I wasn't prepared to live, in an unhappy situation for years in the hope that things may or may not work out, because I'd been in situations like that before. I've been in long-term relationships hoping that things would work out, and they never did, and I wish I'd gotten out sooner.
Yeah.
So I'm very much a person that kind of learns from mistakes and tries not to make the same mistake again.
Yeah. Was it, how did you not see it in the build-up? Was it literally just only came to light around the wedding? Because that's what's interesting when I listen to what you're saying.
Yeah, and lots of people have asked me this. It was how do I say? It was a whirlwind romance, if you like. We met within a few months. We were kind of, talking marriage. Then there was the proposal, and then literally threw ourselves into planning. When really hindsight is a wonderful thing, isn't it? And when really I should have taken the time out to properly get to know him. And work-wise, it was a crazy time for me as well. I was under so much stress, so much pressure, and maybe stupidly I was clinging on to that as kind of being the constant in my life, whereas everything else, was so stressy in terms of arranging the wedding, and then, as I said, work was just crazy.
Yeah. What was your internal dialogue to yourself like throughout this whole period?
So I guess after we got engaged, about a month or so, I think I was starting to question whether this was the right thing for me, only because I'm really, really close to my family, my immediate family, and I was thinking about potentially having to leave home and move out, and I'm not someone that deals with change very well. I inevitably adapt, but initially change is really, really hard for me. And that was kind of, I got to a point where I was like, do I actually want to do this? And I was speaking to friends, I was speaking to family, and they all said, how you're feeling is completely normal. We've been through it, we've been there. It was hard. We're not going to say it isn't, but now, we're in a great place. So what you're feeling now, Amisha, is completely normal. And that for me was like, okay, well then this is okay. It's okay to be having these nerves, to be jittery, but it will pass. And then once I'd got past that, I was 100% committed, and I didn't even question whether it was the right situation for me or not. I was just there, and I was prepared to see it through.
Yeah. And on the other side, and then before we kind of go into, I want to get into when I said internal dialogue, I want to kind of understand what was going on in your mind more than anything, and how you looked after yourself. But before that, how did you deal with, if any, was there a stigma around divorce that you had to face? And was there any sort of perceptions around the families that you had to deal with?
No, because as I said, my parents were really, really supportive, and it did worry me how they would react. And I'm aware of, things like this happening with other people that we know, and kind of how people have reacted to that. I know that in our culture, divorce is kind of, almost like a no-no. But I had the full support of my parents, and they said to me that if you're not happy, then don't do it. My mum did say to me that I think you should go back, and I think you should give it one more go. But if you don't want to, then equally, we're behind you, we'll support you. And that was kind of like my bubble. I was in that bubble with me and my immediate family. I wasn't thinking about the wider community, my extended family. And I knew the kind of conversation that would be going on in the background, but I didn't care. Like I said, the most important thing to me was for me to be happy, my happiness. Yeah. And I've always been like that.
How are you taking care of yourself during this time? Because I think you said before that it was towards the end of 2019 where you realized you had to change something had to change, not just in what you described personally, but within yourself. What was going through your mind there? Like, what were you looking? What did you see in the mirror? What were you feeling in the mirror? What was your self-image at that time?
I mean, obviously, whenever you're going through a situation like that, you do question yourself, and I naturally would question myself anyway. I'm not one to 100% put the blame on someone else, because obviously I had a part to play in how the situation was kind of going. And yeah, it does knock your confidence massively. You know, I was questioning whether I could have done anything, whether I should have done anything. It makes you question your self-worth, and I guess self-esteem and all of those things. And I'm someone that's never I've always kind of struggled with my self-confidence anyway. So that did massively, massively kind of, take a knock. But it's not the first heartbreak that I've ever been through, and it may not be the last. I got through all of those other situations, probably worse situations than this one. And I knew that I would get through it. I just had to allow myself that time to wallow and to blame myself and to blame the other people and whatever else I needed to go through to get myself into a much better place emotionally and mentally.
Did you struggle with self-confidence before and for a long time? Can you describe where does that all stem from?
So I think it came from young. I was quite overweight as a child, so we're talking pretty much most of my childhood, and then up until the age of about 16, 17, that's when I first started kind of dieting and losing weight. But up until that point, I was very overweight, and had to put up with all the comments in school from other kids, my own family. Yeah, so I guess that's where the confidence issue started. And as much as I did lose weight, I never fully kept it off. I did lose weight, even though kind of things changed on the outside. Inside, I was still that girl that was having to deal with those horrible comments about my weight, and that still is something that I'm kind of working on, I guess.
Is that something you kind of see when you look at yourself in the mirror? Do you still see that young girl in there?
I don't necessarily see it, but I do hear it.
What do you
I
hear?
do I hear that voice of all those insecurities, and just coming through. I do hear that sometimes. I mean, not as much as I used to. Like I said, RNT has massively helped with that. But I would still say that there is a part of me deep down that is still that insecure little girl.
What are some of the voices you're hearing?
So, you're too fat, no one's gonna like you, no one's gonna want to be with you, you need to lose weight, you need to look like this, you need to look like that, you need to be like this.
Yeah. Have you reflected on, because you said you gained weight up to the age of 16, 17, have you reflected on what the triggers for that were?
You mean getting fat?
Yeah, what was causing you to gain weight at such a young age?
I guess it was just a comfort thing. I mean, in my family, my dad, was from Africa originally, came here with next to nothing, so really struggled. And when I remember when we were young, the first house that my parents bought was very little in the way of furniture. We had no carpet in the house for 6 months. My parents couldn't afford it. But one thing that I always made sure that we had was food. We had food in abundance in our house. So I guess that was the one thing that was giving us the comfort. And that had always kind of been my comfort. So, through all those insecurities, the voices, the food was kind of what was getting me through. That was always my go-to in terms of filling the hole, if you like.
Yeah, and then it just fueled a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then going into your 20s and early 30s, and what was the journey like for you? Did you find yourself yo-yoing through? Did you find yourself kind of sitting at a certain weight? How did your journey evolve over those years?
So initially, when I lost the weight, I kept it off for a little while, and then it was a yo-yo for probably about 7, 8 years, and then I came across boxing. I did a bit of boxing. I had a coach. So as much as we were doing the physical boxing side of stuff, he was also advising me around nutrition. So that was the first time that I'd done any kind of meal plan in my life, any kind of tracking in terms of how much I was eating. And that was great, because as much as I stopped doing that and I wasn't as religious around tracking and weighing, I still kept up some of those principles. So, loads of fruit and veg, minimal carbs, and loads of protein, and that stabilized my weight, if you like. But it wasn't stabilized in a place where I was happy with it. It just stayed in that place where it was okay. I'd always been into health and fitness, and always liked working out and looking after myself. Before RNT, I was working out 6 days a week, and I was eating now that I reflect, because I'm obviously educationally, I'm in a much better place now, having been on the journey with RNT. Back then, I'm not surprised I had very little energy, because I was living on very, very little. But all I was doing was just maintaining the status quo. I wasn't making any progress in any kind of way, because everything was just kept the same.
Yeah, what sort of things were you doing? Just sort of in whatever you fancied in the day?
Well, so the weekends were a bit more of what I fancy. During the week, I was quite strict, in terms of I was eating pretty much the same things, and I had eaten the same dinner probably for about 10 years. No joke. And then the weekends, so my dinner on Saturday and my dinner on Sunday would be where I'd have whatever I fancied. And a lot of the times it was pizza.
Yeah. So what was your trigger then to start to really take it seriously? Because you said you've been into health and fitness for a while. You're obviously not strangers to the gym, not strangers to dieting. Why was this time different? Why did you decide, okay, I'm going to do this differently now. I'm not going to do what I've done for 10, 15, 20 years. I'm going to take a different route. What was that trigger?
Yeah, so part of it, I think, probably was to do with the ending of my marriage and all the stuff that I was going through there, in terms of, questioning my self-worth and my self-esteem. And then the other thing I would say is I never knew that there was online coaching out there where people could advise you around, what your training plan should look like, what your meal plan should look like, and everything else. And I happened to just stumble across one of your posts on Facebook, and then I went onto your website, and for a good 4 months, I would say, before signing up, I was just researching, reading, and I just thought, wow, I didn't know that something like that existed. And I thought, this is kind of the time. It was almost like it was meant to be, in terms of the timing. And then that's when we just went into lockdown. So I had loads of time to be listening to podcasts, to be doing all my research in terms of all the other RNTers journeys on the website. And I just thought, what, I've got to do this. And I was contemplating surgery as well around that time, because I just thought, I'm never going to be able to get the body that I want. And my problem area always was my midsection. So I was working out my abs 6 days a week, and never saw any improvement. And so in my head, I was like, well, I'm doing everything that I can do physically, and my diet is pretty decent. So I thought, and I'm still not seeing the changes. So I'm going to have to go under the knife in order to get the results that I want. And then obviously you guys, RNT came along, and I just thought, well, actually, let's try this before then I look at doing something different. And I'm amazed as to kind of my results. I really am. And even now, I look at myself and I'm just like, wow, this is just mad. Yeah. I cannot believe that I've actually achieved this.
What were you thinking about when you're going under the knife? Because that's pretty serious. What were you hoping to achieve from the knife?
The body that I'd always wanted. So like the slim kind of, not necessarily abs. I was never chasing abs, but I just wanted a flat stomach.
What do you think that represented for you?
I thought having a flat stomach would mean that I would have loads more confidence, and that confidence, which I felt has always held me back kind of in all areas of my life, career, relationships, all of that would be gone. I wouldn't have confidence issues anymore, because I would feel amazing on the outside. I'd look amazing on the outside, so therefore I'd feel amazing on the inside.
And what are your thoughts on that, looking back?
I mean, I'm so glad I didn't.
Yeah. Is it
I'm so
because
glad
you
I
think?
didn't
Is it
want to
because of
know.
the fact? Because the way I see it is, the confidence comes from the process of doing it, as opposed to necessarily the outcome. The confidence comes from saying no to these things, or yes, I've done this when I'm tired, or yes, I've done things I didn't think were possible, rather
Yeah.
than the outcome. Like, have you found that as well? Because it'd be interesting. Like, I don't. It's impossible to compare, but it'd be interesting to know if that feeling would still come from, let's say, going under the knife.
It's twofold, isn't it? It's the
Yeah.
process and everything that you achieve, the real dark moments that you have and you're questioning, why am I doing this? Is it actually worth it? That is very, very confidence building. But I guess also for me, it was what I saw on the outside that gave me that confidence as well. And I probably haven't reflected properly in terms of which one is giving me the most confidence, and maybe it is equal. But 100%, going through the journey has given me the confidence. I mean, you know, it's given me so much motivation. And if that motivation is harnessed in the right way, I mean, sky's the limit, isn't it? I haven't found what I want to do with this newfound confidence. I'm thinking about different things I could possibly channel that confidence and the energy into. But right now, like I said, I'm just loving life. I'm loving the journey. I'm loving gyms opening. I'm loving, I'm loving my new figure, my new body. But having said that, I've noticed I'm looking in the mirror a lot less than I used to when I
Okay,
wasn't happy with the way I look.
that's interesting.
Yeah, because I would say, and I think it's because those insecurities meant I was always having to check. Oh, hang on, is my stomach really as big as I'm thinking that it is today? Because maybe I'm having a rubbish day today. I was always looking and always maybe trying to reassure myself. Actually, no, you're not as bad as you probably think you are. Actually, your arm isn't that fat, and your stomach isn't as big as you think it might be. Whereas now, I don't question any of that because I know that I'm in a good place in terms of my physique.
That's incredible. When does that shift to start? When did that shift start?
I would say when I started really noticing the differences in the way that I looked when I started the journey. So we're probably September time,
Yeah,
last
that's
September.
fantastic. Tell us some of the dark periods of the journey. You said you mentioned it briefly there, that there were some real character building moments. Talk us through
Yeah.
some of these, and what you experienced, and how you overcame them.
So it would have to be the grind. I mean, that was the most challenging. And when I say most challenging, I don't mean the whole grind phase. For me, it was probably the last 2.5 weeks where we just pushed it completely. So I was doing 20,000 steps a day. I was doing 45-minute cardio every single day. I was doing 4 full body workouts a day, and I
Day.
was working a full time.
So you mean four full body workouts a week? Yeah.
Yeah, what did I say?
Yeah, a day. I was
Week.
thinking that's a new one. That's one I haven't heard.
And I had a full-time job in between all of
Yeah.
this. So, yeah, the dark periods were probably when I was out walking, trying to get my 20,000 steps in, and it was like dark, and it was 6:30, and I still had to come home. I still had to kind of prepare my evening meal. I was still having to do work bits, and there were times where I did really question, is it worth it? Like, what am I doing? Do I really want to be doing this? And I think what helped me is that it's about giving yourself that choice, isn't it? Rather than saying to yourself, I have to do this. Oh my God, my coach is making me do this. So I was always switching that and being like, no, I've chosen to do this. I want to do this. No one's telling me. I can pull out right this minute if I want to. No one's stopping me. But actually, no, I want to do this. And if I can't commit 6 months of my life, like my long life that I've had up until now, 40 years, then what, why
Mm,
can't I commit 6 months to this?
mm.
Because after the 6 months, and I can do whatever the hell I want. The steps can go out the window. I can eat whatever I want. So I was always giving myself that choice, and I don't have to do this. I want to do this, and I will do this.
And why? What was your underpinning there? Why did you say to yourself, like, this is what I want to do? Because it's very difficult when you're in those hard moments of the grind, when you've got that choice, between having an early
Yeah.
night or going out for a walk late at night.
Yeah, I guess it was the changes that I was seeing in terms of my physique and my confidence that were spurring me on during those really, really hard times, because I'd already kind of had a taste of that, and I wasn't prepared to let that go completely. So as hard as it was, and I would always take one day at a time. So I wasn't thinking about the grind phase in terms of, oh my God, I've got to get through the next 2.5 weeks. It was always today, and we'll worry about tomorrow. Let's not think about tomorrow. We just need to get through today. And when I look back now, I don't know how I got through it. I don't know how I was doing 20,000 steps a day, 45 minutes cardio, and work.
Yeah,
And it
it's
was
always
winter. It was freezing. It was
yeah,
horrible out there.
it's
And
always
the
crazy
gym
when you're.
was closing. It was just like I just didn't know where you were. There was always something that was kind of ready to throw me off.
It's always crazy when you're in it. It feels completely normal. When you're out of it, you're like, how was I doing this? Like, what was I
Yeah.
even thinking? But it's pretty crazy what the mind can do when you put it to the
Really.
test.
And that's where that confidence comes from, isn't it? Knowing that you've been through that real kind of dark times and you still got through it. So what couldn't you get through in life? You know?
Yeah. What have you done in the last couple of months that has surprised you?
I'm doing this podcast.
Yeah.
Whereas kind of what, maybe a year ago I would have been like point blank, no, because it's just going to push me way too much out of my comfort zone, and I don't think I want to go there. But yeah, there's this. There's loads of. I turned 40 earlier this year, so there were loads of things I had planned to kind of really market. I couldn't do any of it because of lockdown and all the rest of it. I've done a few of those things. So not saying no to this. I've had a tattoo done, which is something I've always wanted to, but the canvas needed to be right before I went ahead and got the tattoo. So when I had the canvas, I was like, right, I've got to go and get this tattoo now.
I love it. That's exactly the way it should be done. If you look back on the journey of the coming up to a year now, what have been some of the biggest game changer habits that you've implemented in your day that for you make everything else easier?
Meals, having a meal plan and meal prepping, 100%. Because you're not having to think about it. It's there, it's done. And then you're not, there's less chances of me then pulling something out of the cupboard that I know I shouldn't be having, but I have it anyway because it's there, it's convenient, and I haven't got time to do anything else.
Do you eat the same thing every day across all meals, or?
I don't eat the same thing every day, but I have my go-to meals that I switch between.
Okay, yeah, I got it. This is pretty similar. So you automate most of it and then kind of flex where you need to.
Yeah, so I'll have one day where I'll be in one particular meal plan, and I'll have like two of my go-to meals, and then the next day I'll have another two, and then I'll alternate. And then the weekends is a bit more flexible,
And
and
how
I'll
have you?
experiment in the
Yeah,
kitchen.
I was going to come on to that. Like, how have you managed to experiment a bit more? And how are you doing with the onus of like trial and error, educating yourself? How have you shifted yourself into the driving seat more so you understand what's in what food, what contains what amount of calories, how can I make easy swaps, etc. Like, how are you shifting into making it just a way of being, as opposed to I'm pushing towards this photo shoot or this checkpoint, etc.
I guess for me, as much as I was, during the process phase, I was the checkpoint was kind of, was my goal at the time. I was still making sure that I was thinking lots and lots and lots about what I wanted after that, and
Mm.
not seeing the checkpoint as that's it, I'm done now. Right, I can go off and do something else. So I was very much focused on what do I want afterwards, and I flitted between, do I want to stay lean or do I want to go into muscle building? And I think I'm kind of in between at the moment. But I think being on higher calories helps in terms of education, because there's a lot more leeway. There's a lot more that you can play with in terms of kind of what meals you want. And when you go through the process phase, you're learning so much there, which I can then transfer into kind of this phase where I'm in now,
Yeah.
in terms of meals and what's giving me what nutrition, and where can I get my fats from, but then not get the carbs from. That has all come from kind of what I've learned during my process phase.
And what in that process phase helped you learn that? What were you paying attention to?
It was my plan, and I was playing. I played around with my plan a
Yeah.
lot, and that's where the education came from, because I was so, and I'm still playing around with it a lot now, if I'm being honest. So yeah, so I know what my fat sources are. I've got my go-to fat sources. I know what my carb sources are. Those are my go-to, and I know what my proteins are. And as long as I'm getting those things in, I know that I'm not going to be way off in terms of meeting my macros and meeting my calorie targets.
Yeah. So how do you foresee the next year going? Are you gonna? I know you said you're kind of in the middle. Do you want to experiment with sort of trying to really build some extra muscle?
100%. So I want to get this holiday kind of out of the way, because I want that beach body kind of, for
Have
the
you got a holiday
bikini,
booked?
the rest of it. I have. I've had about 4 cancelled,
Oh, okay.
but I've got another one booked in July. So once that's done and out of the way, then I do want to definitely go more into calorie surplus and muscle building, and see what I can achieve. So I love lifting in the gym.
Yeah.
Kind of live that. So why, I'd be selling myself short if I didn't push the muscle building side of things, I think.
What are some of your favorite lifts?
RDLs.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
sick.
that's completely new to me until I joined RNT. But yeah, do love RDLs. Always loved back work, so lat pull downs,
Okay.
leg press.
Oh, awesome. And just on that topic, what would you say to fellow women who may find it difficult to feel comfortable in the gym, feel comfortable with pushing hard in those sorts of exercises in the gym? Because that's a very common feeling that many women have. Speak to the women there about, early experiences in the weight room, continued experiences in the weight room, and building that confidence in there.
So before RNT, I would have been one of these people that would have been more focused on other people in the gym than I would have been my own kind of training in the gym. So I would have not probably shied away from machines where I thought, oh no, everyone's going to look at me, and I'm going to have to put my body in a weird position, and people will look at me, and I'm not going to do that. But having a plan has massively changed that. So now when I go into the gym, I have a plan. And I know what I'm doing in that plan. So that's helping me to keep focused on what I'm doing, and not so much on what other people are doing. And the other thing, I've heard other people say this on their podcast as well, is that people in the gym are not there to look at you. They don't care. They're more interested in looking at themselves, and they're more focused on what they're doing. And when you start, when that starts to become, part of your consciousness when you're in the gym, then that can mean that you're focusing more on what you're doing and not so much on other people, because everyone's doing their own thing in the gym. And yeah, it's tough, because it's really hard, I think, for women in the gym, especially when you're in the weight section, which is kind of always the monopoly there is for the men to be kind of taking charge, and wanting this way and wanting to use that. But I would just say, do you know what, you have got just as much right to be there, and you've got just as much to gain and just as much to achieve from being there as do the guys. I think it's looked upon, well, why are you doing that? Because you're a woman, you don't need to have those big muscles, whereas the guys do. No, women can have like muscles as well. It's not just about men having them.
So some of the women listening might think, yeah, that sounds great. I'm gonna go do this tomorrow and show them who's boss. But how do you take that first step? What are some easy first steps you can take to make yourself more comfortable?
Like I said, I think having the plan.
Yeah.
I have a book with me, where I track all of my numbers. So that is something that I'm keeping focused on when I'm in the gym, as opposed to what other people are doing, what other people are looking at. And also, I have my my earpods in, and I'm listening to music, and that does help to drown out what is going on around me, because I'm there. It's me. It's my music. It's my exercise, and it's my plan.
Yeah. I think I think when you have a plan, you have more of a direction in the gym. So you're not kind of scatty, and you're not looking, like you said, you're not looking around, and you can just focus on what the next thing is to do, and just go all out on that.
Definitely. Whereas I never had that before, and I was the one that was kind of, wondering what do I do next and who's doing what, and it just
Yeah.
wasn't great.
At the start of this podcast, you talked about self-love, you talked about self-care, and how it's a really big priority for you to be independent. Um, what are some of the steps you've taken here to be more independent, to show yourself more love on a regular basis? Because it's very easy for us to, to put ourselves down, to give ourselves that negative self-talk. How have you? And it's obviously a work in progress for everyone, and we're all working towards improving that. Talk us through that journey of yours, in the last year, but also years before, if that's relevant.
So for me, self-love comes from a place of liking who I am as a person, and I think that comes from being, or at least trying to be, the best possible person that I can be in life. So, try being the best daughter that I can, being the best friend that I can, being the best sister. And don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect. I'm making mistakes on a daily basis. With all of that, but I'm learning from those mistakes, and each and every day I'm trying to be a better person and feeling that I'm doing the best that I can in terms of being a good person, living my life kind of by, high morals, high values, high standards. That is where kind of my self-love comes from.
How do you check yourself to learn from those mistakes on a day-to-day basis or week-to-week basis, so you don't repeat them? You can grow from them. You can continue to make improvements.
That's hard because I probably am making, in terms of like my immediate family, I'm probably making the same mistakes on a daily basis. I'm not going to lie about that. But I always reflect at the end of the day, and I think, do you know what? That wasn't a great thing to say, and that wasn't a great way to behave. So maybe I need to think about the way that I am. And yeah, the next time I probably will do the same thing. But I guess it's about being aware and being conscious of it, rather than just thinking it's okay to behave in that way. There's no arrogance there in terms of, I think that, I'm allowed to say this to my mum, or I'm allowed to do this in my house. Yeah. I'm not. It's about respect, and everyone lives it. It's about respecting everyone, and no one deserves to be shouted at or screamed at just because I'm having a crap day.
Yeah. Totally agree. It's much easier to do it with much harder to do it with your immediate family, because they often become your blind spots, and
especially during lockdown. I mean, I would have happily shipped them out, moved them somewhere else, to a different country, and lived by myself. It's been really, really challenging. That has.
So,
but
Misha,
then my family was going to be my family, and I wouldn't be without them.
Absolutely. Misha, you said that you still haven't thought about what you want to do with the confidence you've got. Have you got any early ideas on how? what's a Misha 2.0 going to look like?
So I am giving some thought to potentially starting a business. But I mean, this is just thinking. I haven't laid any foundations whatsoever. But I'm really interested in maybe kind of going down a vegan, vegetarian food supply type business, because throughout this journey I have learned so much about nutrition, and all that education has been invaluable for me, and I'd really like to be able to kind of impart some of that on other people and allow them to be in situations where, when you're ordering a takeaway, you haven't just got the junk options, you've got some really decent food options that actually taste really good as well. Because I think a lot of people will say, actually, but if it's healthy, it's not indulgent, it's not going to taste good, it's not going to be my Friday night takeaway treat, so therefore I'm not going to do it. Why can't it be? Healthy foods. I found that out myself. I'm eating some amazing meals right now, and I don't need to go out to restaurants. I don't need to order takeaways, because I've got it all at home, and it probably tastes so much better.
Yeah. What's some of your go-to vegetarian and vegan meals, and especially protein sources? Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks to you, I am loving sourdough.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely love sourdough. And
what do you have it with?
So I have cheese. So I get Eat Lean protein cheese.
Oh yeah.
I kind of saute mushrooms and spinach with some spring onion and kind of lay that over the top.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it's really good. And then I've come across these flatbreads that I get in Sainsbury's, and I kind of almost make like a like a doner kebab, a vegetarian doner kebab. So I've got the raw coleslaw with the cabbage and the carrots and the spring onion and the peppers, which tastes amazing. I mean, my family are hooked on those flatbreads.
What do you put in the protein? What's the protein source?
It can be anything. So I've put falafel. You can get so many of these, these meat lookalike things.
Yeah.
These kebab pieces. You can get these nugget things. Jackfruit is another one, which, I mean, the macros for jackfruit, I don't know whether you've ever, I mean, the whole can is like 30 calories and there's like fiber and nothing else. So no fat, no protein, but then you add the protein. So I would add to that, if I was going to have jackfruit in my flatbread, I would have some protein cheese with it, and that would be where my protein comes from. And that tastes amazing. My nephew loves that.
Yeah, some of the meat mock stuff is pretty good nowadays, and it used to be just full of junk as well, but now it's pretty good stuff, and it doesn't taste too dissimilar from the real thing.
Really, yeah. I've been a vegetarian for a long time, so I've forgotten what meat tastes like. But these things are really, really great. Yeah, there's no excuse these days to say that, oh well, I can't be vegetarian because there's not enough out there. There is so much out there.
Nah, yeah, like 5-10 years ago, I used to make a big deal out of any vegetarian or vegan that I work with, because it was always a lot more difficult, and so I used to say like, it can be possible for vegan and vegetarians, but now I feel like it's just part of the course, and it's exactly the same as it would be for a regular person, because anywhere you go out to eat, there's so many options, whereas 5-10 years ago you'd get like one option. It'd usually be like a ravioli, and that's about it.
A lot of places now will have their own kind of vegan vegetarian menu, which is amazing.
Yeah. So to finish up, how has the physical been the vehicle for you?
Well, I'm still working on it being the vehicle. Like I said, there are things that I'm thinking about, but what it's done for me in where I'm at right now is that I am so grateful for everything kind of that's kind of in my life, and that's come from a place of me feeling really content with who I am. Still a journey, don't get me wrong. I'm still working on certain things, but that feeling of contentedness and gives me so much gratitude, and there are definitely things I want to do with my confidence. It's just working out, what I want to do. And I don't want to come up with an idea and then not be committed and then, flit and change and do something else. I want to make sure that I'm 100% kind of, doing it and doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah. And actually one follow-up to that, what would you say to the younger Amisha now?
Don't worry so much about what other people say and think. It's your life. Live it the way that you want to. People are always going to have an opinion, but it doesn't matter. It's how you feel that's more important.
Amazing. Thanks so much for sharing your journey. I'm looking forward to seeing how the next phases unravel for you. I can only see a lot of growth coming your way.
Amazing. Thank you so much.